Of the book, Propaganda: How Police and the Media Manipulate Our News. And that does it for our show. I'll be speaking Thursday, January 29th, after the screening of Steal the Story, Please at the Barrymore Film Center, a historic film center in Fort Lee, New Jersey. The film will be there at 7:30. You can go to our website at democracynow.org. Also there, Tia Lesson, the director of the film. And we are celebrating our 30th anniversary. That's February 23rd. Juan Gonzalez will be flying in. Among those there will be Wynton Marsalis and Michael Stipe, Hooray for the Riff Raff, and more. Check out our website at democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarlane, host of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 98.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. You know, we're doing special programming all day today here on KFAI, and our show today is consistent with that, getting active, keeping our community active and aware. We're doing that every day, every week in Insight News, every day at insightnews.com and across our social media platforms. And this program is one of the highlights of our week, sharing with you in the KFAI audience locally and globally. We invite you to participate in our conversation with Al McFarlane by dropping in a quote or a comment, observation, shouting yourself out, your location out in the comment section if you're on one of the social media platforms. Today, I want to begin the program with an interview that caught my attention and start off with Quiet Storm said, "Good afternoon, praying for Minnesota." Quiet Storm, thank you so much. Anybody else wants to talk about what we're doing here in Minnesota, drop a note in the comment section. We'll try to shout it out. I want to begin by referring to a person, inviting you to meet a person that I met watching YouTube. Myron Fontaine is called the Prison Doctor, and he's one of the nation's leading voices in youth intervention and family restoration, in the prison pipeline prevention. He's bold, he's unapologetic, purpose-driven. He spent a decade transforming the lives of at-risk teens across America, and through his groundbreaking in-home intervention model, he's reached children in 32 states, has helped more than 6,500 youth overcome their own experience with defiance, aggression, gang influence, their academic struggles, and the emotional battles that often lead to incarceration. So he now serves as a CEO and the face of Prison Doctor Inc. We'll be telling you how to connect with him. Brother Myron, welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me, Al.
Well, I tell you, I was just so impressed with seeing you, hearing you, and watching you in action. Talk about the Prison Doctor, what the mission, the vision is, and how you interact in support of children and families.
Right. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit mentoring organization that goes all across the country mentoring at-risk youth. So it is a very huge job that we have, as we get thousands of calls literally every day of parents all across America just in desperate need of help, feeling they have no resources, Al, with police or therapists or counselors. And these parents are, very, very in a bad way need help. And so they call the Prison Doctor organization as a last resort to get their child under control and lead them on a road of success. So that's pretty much what we do. I've been doing this for 10 years. I spent quite a bit of time in prison for vehicular armed robbery when I was a kid back in 1989. And so when I came home in 2012, I came home to a world that's very different than the world I went into. There were no fathers in the home, Al. Kids were wearing their pants halfway off their behinds. The music was very degrading and demeaning to women. The drugs was just through the roof with these kids smoking, and it was just ridiculous, man. And so God put it on my heart to do something about it. As a man, I came home and just compelled to want to make my community better. It was just disgusting. And so I started Prison Doc Inc., and it has quickly grown to being the #1 mentoring organization in the country. And that is just the truth.
So in prison, did the idea come to you while you were in prison? Tell the background story. Just take a minute or two, if you wish, about how and why and what growing you did while you were there that enabled you to come out and pursue both vision and mission.
Sure. Well, to kind of understand that, you have to understand my past a little bit. So I come from Motown. My father was a Motown funk brother who helped Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson put Motown records together back in the 50s before I was even born. Wow. My father's the horn on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, Let's Get It On, Inner City Blues, Mercy, Mercy Me, the Dramatic songs who were with Stax Records. My father was their manager. So I grew up kind of privileged, in the studios, in the
you got the culture in your blood.
Culture is in my blood. And old school culture is in my blood. So, I came up under that tutelage, right? And made some bad decisions, as a teenager and wound up going to prison. So when I came home, the shock of that, right? Understanding that I came from an era that was, about respecting women and respecting children. The certain things you couldn't say or do in the home with mom or dad there. You know what I mean? So I came home, it was a culture shock when I saw how children were so misbehaved in the home, telling parents what they will and won't do, and literally, threatening to call the police on their mothers if they don't get their way. And this was just it was a literal, you got to get that out. It was a literal culture shock that I'm hearing kids calling their mothers the B word, and mothers are tolerating it. You know what I mean? So for me, it was just something that was intolerable, and I couldn't accept that. I won't. I still don't. And we are fighting with everything we have, Al, to make a difference in this culture, in this society, to bringing these children back to reality and understanding that the road they're on doesn't work.
Brother Myron, then take a minute to talk about what you think are the biggest behavioral, emotional, and spiritual challenges facing teens and their parents, their families right now. What are they? What's the list?
I'll start with the last first, the spiritual. There is none. That's one of the biggest problems, is that these children have no concept of God. And that's a huge problem, because if you don't understand, where you come from, if you don't have a source, a spiritual connection to something that's bigger than you, then ultimately you will live a life very vicariously, very just, very sporadic life, very impulsive life. And this is why our children today have no direction, right? They're up one minute, they're down the next. One day they wake up happy, the next day they're sad. One day their pants are over their belly button, the next day it's below their knees. These kids have no identity to anything, to nothing. There's nothing holding these kids accountable to nothing, right? See, when we were growing up, again, I have to go back, we were accountable to God. We had some sense of consequences and paying a price for things that you do that are not righteous, right? These kids don't have that because mom and dad is not teaching that, right? So the schools have taken God out of the school. So you don't have God in school. The preachers aren't really preaching God in the church. Church now has become a place of entertainment. So you can't go there to get God, unfortunately, which is sad to say, and then you're not getting it in the home, because mom ain't talking about God. Dad ain't there to talk about God. So a child is just being raised on, being role models, being, Nicki Minaj and P. Diddy and, Dirty Red. I don't call it Sexy Red, Dirty Red and, Lil Wayne. These are the role models of today. These kids are idolizing people that are not worth being idolized, and they are going down a rough road. And until we as adults and parents step up and put a stop to this madness, I'm promising you, you're going to regret it later. You're going to regret it.
So how does your process work, your system work? You do in-home interventions. That's what I saw when I came across you on YouTube. Explain that process, if you would.
Sure. So we take the problem to where it is. We meet them where they at, at their home. You know what I mean? We catch them on their turf, on their playing field, right? And that's a better way of solving the problem and helping the children to understand that, their behavior is unacceptable when you meet them at their home, at their safe space, when you can go in there and address the issues that those children are having, you have a better chance of success. The reality is people are quick to say, well, if you have a troubled child, take him to a therapist. Let him go to a therapist for help. Well, if the child is slapping you and telling you what he will and won't do in your home and telling you he ain't going to school or he's going to do what he wants to do, what makes you think he's going to go to a therapist? What makes you think, he's going to be willing to come up and just, go and have a session with a therapist, right?
Well, let me throw this back at you, prison doctor. What makes you think you can get him or her to do that if the parent can't do it? How does it work?
That is a great question. I do it very well and been doing it for 10 years very successfully. That's why the prison doctors all over the country, right? With the highest success rate in the nation, right? We go there because we have a no-nonsense approach, Al. See, they're children, right? Mm-hmm. So you put a child in a child's place. And that don't necessarily have to be through anything physical. It's verbal. It's spiritual. Your tone of your voice can bring about result and change. Your physiognomy, the way you look, your facial expression can bring about change. The knowledge in your voice when you speak truth to children can bring change in their home. And that is what we do. And that's why therapists are blowing my phone up to come and deal with these children.
So take me through the process. I'm here in Minnesota, and my kid, maybe is 12, 13, 14, and feels like he or she can hang out with the neighbors because their parents don't give them the rule of being in when the lights come on at night. They get to stay out late, but mine don't. And so my kid is rebelling, and to the point where the kid feels he or she can challenge me and my authority and run the house. How do you help Al McFarlane in a situation like that?
Absolutely. Let me answer that.
And let me ask you, so I know that you probably work mostly with homes where the father is absent, but there may be situations where the father is there as well, and the kid just so powerfully influenced that he or she is out of control. But what do you think?
Absolutely. Well, let me answer that real quick like this. I can't give you every step of what we do, Al, and our protocols. We have protocols for certain things. And the reason why is because the Bible teaches you don't cast your pearls amongst swine, right? Mm-hmm. People are trying to find out the prison doctor's methods of what we do step by step when we go into these homes. And unfortunately, there are people who have monetized my social media. If you go on TikTok, you will see 20 different prison doctor pages on all over social media. And these are potential sex offenders, right? Who are trying to find out how I do what I do so they can potentially go in someone's home and victimize some child, right? Wow. So I'm very cautious of giving out any, how I do my thing, right? Because people would take this and ruin it. Yep. Somebody would take this stuff, what I'm doing, right? If it's not the right person that has good intentions and go into a child's house and victimize a child, it won't happen on my watch. So I don't give, step by step detail of what I do. But I'll tell you this, when I go into a home and there's a father there and they're calling the father, calling me to come in where there's a father in the home, oftentimes it's because the father is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, right? Mm-hmm. You would think that why would you have to call the prison doctor into a home where there's a man in there, where there's a father in there? Well, unfortunately, all across America, Al, you have so many improper fathers, right? Mm-hmm. You may have a father, but that doesn't mean he's a proper father. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's going wrong in America, in our homes, is that you have fathers, you have mothers, but they're not proper parents. Proper meaning that they have the tools on knowing how to discipline, how to raise a child, right? So we don't call a father a proper father when the father is a pants-sagging father or a weed-smoking father or a godless father. We don't call them proper fathers, right? So that's the problem, is that many of the adults are dropping the ball because they're not proper parents. And that's why the prison doctor comes in with his approach, and the kids respect it, and it works very, very well. So that's where we have to get back to, Al, is just teaching the parents how to be proper parents.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm talking with Myron Fontaine. He's known as the Prison Doctor, leads an organization called the Prison Doctor. What's the full name of the organization?
Yeah, it's Prison Doc Inc.
Prison Doc Inc. And it's
501c3.
intervening on behalf of children who have discovered lack of accountability, lack of direction, and he's bringing techniques and tools to those households, to those parents who are looking for his help, and he's doing it nationwide, 32 states so far. Are you in Minnesota yet? We're in Minnesota. I don't know that. Are you here in Minnesota already with an organization?
We just left Minnesota, and we don't have a home base there. We have a home base in Atlanta, Georgia, and South Carolina, but we're spreading all through the nation now. We're looking for representatives in all 50 states across America. So if you have any people on here who wants to join the organization and be a representative and put in some work to helping these kids, please have them give me a call.
Okay, great. I'm going to put your contact information up on the screen shortly. Let me bring in a friend of mine, a colleague who's a leader in public policy work in Minnesota here, Brother James Trice. James Trice, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm beautiful. How you doing, Brother Al?
I'm doing good. Thank you. And thank you for sitting in. Let me ask you, Brother Myron, in today's difficult environment, I'm talking about the public policy environment of Minnesota. How difficult is it to both provide protection and guidance for your children in our community is being traumatized at the moment by ICE? And so how do social activities impact a family's and a parent's ability to speak truth and provide care and love and protection that the child deserves to that child? What do you think?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't really have those conversations, Al, because that's not my forte, right?
Okay.
I don't get into the political thing of, that stuff. I stay out of that lane, right? Because it gets very jumbled. It becomes opinionated and it becomes distracting to the real issues that I'm dealing with. So I kind of stay out of those things. But I'll tell you this, is that there's a huge problem with a lot of policies in America, right? On both sides of the aisle, right? Again, and we were just talking about earlier how we having debates on what's identified as a damn woman, excuse my language. We're having debates on what is identified as a man. We're having debates on a cross-dresser being allowed to go into a little girl's bathroom. We're having debates. I mean, so it's so much political blame that can go around, right? But that's a waste of time for the mission that I'm on now. So unfortunately, that's not my thing.
Okay, well, look, let me have people know where to reach you. If we can have that information, Jared, put it on the screen. More information, theprison.org. Brother Myron, thank you so much for this brief interview. I want to do more with you down the road, get and talk about, some of the successes you've had around the country. But thank you so much. Continued success in your work, and just be well.
Thank you, Al, so much for a great interview, and I hope to speak with you guys soon.
All right, thank you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Brother James, what you think, man?
Wow, that was interesting. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but what I did hear is really his energy more importantly than his words, and it's like he's emphatic about what he wants to do. But I think it's worth looking into. I'm hearing exactly what he's saying, that we need to begin to address these things and prevent these kids from going into prison. And but I do think there is a piece that you need to look at as far as policy is concerned, because we have to look at the school to prison pipeline and how these kids are being really pushed into prison, right? They have a little small infraction. They may disobey a rule or whatever at school. And particularly our kids as Black kids, what my understanding is that they are being referenced to disciplinary action, as opposed to let's talk about how we can help you be better at school. More often than not, our kids are referred to the SROs, school resource officers or police officers that are in our schools, the principal's office, or for disciplinary actions that don't help correct the problem, but just are disciplining them. And it's a pipeline to prison. And so although I like what I heard from brother, I do think that that's a significant piece. If we can prevent that, then we might not need his service, right? If we can deal with that policy wise, it may prevent them from even going as far as to be in a point where he has to intervene and do what he does. So I apologize that I missed his whole conversation.
Oh, that's fine. No, it's okay. But we both are concerned about the issues that he raised, and that's how do we more effectively parent and how we serve the children, because they're children, and our obligation is to create a space where they can grow healthy and not go to prison, right? And not be misdirected, misled, and induce, pulled astray. So it's a good conversation. Let me introduce, talk about a second, if you would, what you're doing with the Public Policy Project. You've been a guest here several times over the years, and we appreciate the relationship. You're going to be with us, sitting in from time to time. We think that's important to have a voice and a knowledge base that you represent as we analyze current affairs here around the country, around the world, through a public policy lens. So talk about the Public Policy Project, what it is, what you do.
Well, thank you so much for Al for having me, and it's good to be here on your show. You do great work. Thank you for the work that you do to make sure our community get the proper, accurate information that we need. There's thousands of media outlets that tell stories that purport to control the narrative about what's happening with our communities, and oftentimes they get it wrong. I thank you for being one of the media outlets that tells the accurate story about what's going on in our community, so we can count on you and realize that this is not fake news that's going around. So the Public Policy Project, we started off 2000, even probably before that. I was working at a social service agency as their policy director, and my job was to represent clients that are coming through the social service agency and represent them at the policy level to help them understand how policy impacts their position and where they are, right? Child services, family services, and that kind of thing, and kind of really talk with decision makers and help move policies that would help them be better, and to really help them to function and better their lives. That ended, and I decided to take what I created at that social service agency into its own organization. It's called the Public Policy Project, and I began to train communities to understand how public policy affects them, how to be more civically engaged, more civically active, how to understand who represents you, how to vote, how to make your voice heard, how to really write letters to your legislators, how to make phone calls, how to have that, that 30-second elevator talk to your elected official, what to say, and how to really frame your message framing. And for several years, I've trained thousands and thousands of people around the country on how to really do that and be more civically active, more civically engaged. And I do that with the premise that that we have far more power than we realize. We don't understand the power. And I think it was Toni Morrison, I believe, said this. The mistake we make about power is to believe that we don't have any. All of us have power. We just need to understand how to use that power to leverage what it is we want, and to create a better society and a better life than what we see right now, and to change our current condition, right?
So Brother James, how do we take that mission, that understanding, and apply it to the here and now? Our city, our state is in a state of trauma. That's the best way I can describe it, because places I drive every day, to the Wedge over in South Minneapolis, along Lake Street, Nicollet Avenue, Broadway, Lowry, I'm now acutely aware of the possibility of coming across an ICE intervention. I'm acutely aware of all of the massive and I think wonderful protests that have erupted in the wake of the murder, the death of two fellow residents of Minnesota, Sister Good and brother Freddie. Yeah.
Pretty.
So,
Yes.
so how do we encourage ourselves to understand and utilize and reflect that power in this dramatic environment? What do you think?
Well, I think we continue to do what the people are doing on the street right now, protesting. I think that's a form of resistance. We have to resist this authoritarian regime. We have to resist this and use every strategy at our disposal to do it, aside from violence and
Yeah.
aside from anything that's going to really detour or to upend our mission. I think with the brothers and sisters, white, black, Hispanic, whoever on the streets marching, protesting, I think that's one way to do it. And I encourage brothers to continue to do that. I think those who are working on the policy end, our legislators, our decision makers at the city and county and state and federal level, engaging them on what makes sense. How do we move? How do we change policies that prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future? The question, though, is that it's going to, as long as we continue in this system of white supremacy, right, or this false ideology of white supremacy, we're going to continue to have these things. Let me just be clear, right? This is not new. This is America. Everything 1619 and before, America's built on violence. America's built on oppression. America's built on the subjugation of people. America's built on that. So what we're seeing is not new, right? The Dred Scott decision. In the Dred Scott decision, Justice Roger Taney, in his deciding opinion, and the court held this, that essentially, let me just shorten it. It says essentially that blacks have no rights that whites are bound to respect. And
so let me jump in. Let me jump in. One of our viewers and listeners has put a couple of comments in. Thank you, the Big Cheese, in the chat. In the comment says, first of all, keep your ID with you and stay off the streets. He says it's not our fight. And then the next comment is on the screen now. You can't hear it on the radio, but I'll read it. It says the ICE agents are not targeting FBA, Foundational Black Americans, because we are heritage Americans. Brother, I totally disagree with you, but I thank you for saying what you're saying, because that's a big discussion in our community. So, James, we toss it to you. What do you think? Number one, you may agree with them, you may not. I don't. What do you think?
I don't agree with them either. I think that it's essentially, I mean, it is about us, right? I mean, it is about us. I mean, Judge Roger Taney said blacks have no rights that whites are bound to. That means black people of color have no rights that whiteness is bound to respect. And there have been brothers in other cities, foundational black Americans that have been pulled over and harassed by ICE. It has happened, and it is happening, right? And so just because we see, Renee Good and Alex Petty, murdered by ICE, law enforcement, and really this authoritarian government really is behind this, right? Who murdered these two white folks. The same thing happened with Schwerner and Goodman, 1964, when they were with Cheney. They were part of CORE, and they went to try to register people to vote in 1964, and they were murdered by Klansmen and the sheriff, these white people. So what they're saying is this. Even the Fugitive Slave Act, right? And all of these acts that were there, these policies, that even if white people intervened and stood with us to support us in our struggle against oppression, that they will kill them too. So yes, they're doing to us, right? They will kill them too because they stood in the way of oppression. You, a white person who said, hey, look, I'm gonna stand with black people against this oppression, they were killed too, just as well. So my heart, my prayers, and my thoughts go out to Sister Renee Good's family and Brother Alex Preddy's family. But before there was a Alex Preddy, before there was a Renee Good, there was a Goodman. There were a Schwerner and Goodman. There were other countless white people who died to stand in the way of oppression and authoritarianism against black and brown bodies. And so, brother, whoever that is, no, they are they are doing it to us as well. You just don't hear it. See,
I say this kind of tongue in cheek. We came here, Brother James. We were imported.
Yes.
We were imported. If they imported you, brother, they will deport you as well.
Yes.
And to claim that I'm a foundational Black American is to ignore the reality of the circumstance of our presence from the beginning. And our presence here has always demanded and required that we struggle, that we fight, that we strategize, and that we use every available tool, particularly the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, local law, local civic, cultural, economic tools, and moral suasion to withstand the evil that we have suffered. And I tell you, the proof of the pudding of the correctness of our position has been that we're still here and that we're leading on the moral front. And I think ultimately we'll lead in every other sphere as well. I had an interview yesterday with some friends from the Joint Center for Policy. It's a Black think tank. Big Cheese is saying in comment here, the FBA are not immigrants. Yeah, of course, we're not immigrants, but don't believe you can't be deported. You can be disappeared, and sent somewhere that you think you have no relationship to. Anyway, that's how you got here. You were kidnapped and disappeared. So let me, James, have you hang out. Before I bring this video on, talk about the importance of public policy work. How do we broadly make public policy part of the water cooler, the dinner table, the breakfast conversation in our families, in our circles, in our social circles, so that we're always focused on building and creating, managing public policy that supports our freedom, our liberation. What do you think?
I think it's critically important. I just want to be clear, though. It's one part of a multi-pronged strategy to get what it is that we want and to address the injustices that that happen to us. So let me use an example, right? When Derek Chauvin, police officer Derek Chauvin, murdered George Floyd, and then county attorney was reluctant. He was a little reticent about bringing even an indictment against this white police officer, as he has been previously, and not bringing charges against white police officers who murder Black and brown people. And then, long story short, Keith Ellison, who was elected, think about this, he was elected attorney general, took the case and prosecuted Derek Chauvin. And I believe with all of my heart that if Keith Ellison, a Black man, was not elected to be attorney general, Derek Chauvin would still be walking the streets. I can almost guarantee you, I bet my last dollar that would be so. That's the importance of civic engagement. That's the importance of being involved with a policy and saying we need to put some guards against this. Now, let me be clear with this, right? Policy is not intended to change the opinions and minds of people. What it's intended to do is not allow those opinions, those thoughts, those ideas that people have about us, those disparaging thoughts, those false notions, those false assumptions about who we are. I think somebody said that Black men, America has typecast Black men as America's villains. And that's how they see us. And then what they do is they try to pass policies to reinforce what they think about us. And so policy is critically important to understand and how to do it. And let me just say this too, that if you're eligible to vote, you should vote in every single election, local, state, county, federal election. You should vote in every single election and know who you're voting for and why. Now, we're in a system where many times we have to choose between Satan and Lucifer, right? Or who's going to do the least harm to us. Many times we're stuck there, and we still have to get involved, because when you don't vote, those of you, I don't know how many people who did, 90 million people, I think, did not vote. in this past election when Donald Trump ran for president. 90 million people did not vote in this election. 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, even knowing that this man was a 34-time convicted felon. 34-time convicted felon. 91. He had 91 indictments against him. 2 times he was impeached. Right? I mean, think about this. A criminal. These folks said they'd rather vote for a criminal to be in office than a black woman. That's essentially what people said, right? So and so when they did that, a lot of the people who are marching now, let me be honest with you, a lot of these people who are marching now voted for Donald Trump because they didn't think it was going to happen to them. And so the importance is, the reason why it's so important is to understand that policy moves things. Again, the 13th and 14th Amendment, it was intended to repudiate what Justice Roger Taney in the Supreme Court said, that blacks have no rights that whites are bound to respect. So the 13th Amendment was passed to abolish slavery. The 14th Amendment was passed to say that black people are human beings and therefore citizens of the United States. So these do affect us. And let me go back on something that the brother said, talking about foundational black Americans and that they're not mess with us and that we're not immigrants and all of that. James Baldwin said this in 1979. He said, the intentions of this melancholy country as concerns black people, and anyone who doubts me can ask any Indian, have always been genocidal. Always been genocidal. They, white people, need us for labor and for sport. And now they cannot get rid of us. But they're still trying to figure out a way to get rid of us. Look, they've never stopped fighting the Civil War, brother. They never stopped fighting. They lost the battle, but they never stopped fighting the Civil War. And this is an example of them never stopping fighting the Civil War, never ceasing it, because they believe in manifest destiny. They believe they're supposed to rule and reign. That's what they believe.
And I think that whole system of patriarchy or patriarchic hierarchy supports capitalism and white supremacy. So look, let me do this. Let's listen to a part of this interview I did yesterday, and I'll finish up the listening tomorrow on tomorrow's conversation. Maybe you can come back with me tomorrow as well. Tomorrow will be only online, but today's on radio and online. And this was an interview with the principals at the Joint Center for Policy. It's a black think tank, and they issued a report that we talk about. Let's check it out, and you and I can sit on the side and make comment. If you're listening online, keep the conversation going in the chat. And if we need to, we can pause the tape from yesterday, and you and I can jump in and make a comment and come back. And we'll do this today and tomorrow. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. And for all of our listeners here at KFAI and at KFAI.org, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. If you get a chance, go to our YouTube channel and like, share, and become a member. We appreciate your support. We want to grow this channel. Let's check this out. Jared, go ahead and play the interview that I did yesterday with well, I'll introduce them in the video. Go ahead. McFarlane, welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm pleased to have 2 guests today, Monica Mitchell and Dedrick Asante-Muhammad. They're both authors of an important report that we're sharing with you today, or parts of it today, in today's edition of Insight News. The article is written by Dedrick Asante-Muhammad. It's called Dr. King's Warnings Seem More Prescient Than Ever. And obviously, it's a time we're all focusing on the work, the mission, the vision of Dr. King, but we're also focusing on the tremendous upheaval happening in our culture, community, our country right now. We want to cover those things. Brother Dedrick, let me have you introduce yourself and your work as a leader in the public policy space, and introduce the center.
Great. Well, my name again is Dedrick Asante-Muhammad, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, and hope your audience will allow me the more casual dress I'm in. Where I am at, we're in a snowstorm and our electricity is out. So I was spending the morning driving family to different warm locations and didn't get a chance to put on the suit and tie, but I wanted to be here regardless of the dress I'm in. And just noting, Joint Center for Political Economic Studies was founded in 1970. We've been called America's Black think tank. The first 10, 20 years, we're focused much on supporting the kind of transition from where you had African Americans more as activists on the outside of a political system and now more as elected officials within a system, and providing them resources and training and support to allow them to best utilize their opportunities. And then I'd say from about 1990 on, we were Joint Center for Political Studies. 1990, we became Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. We became more what you think of as a think tank, of more focused on research and analysis that would go to elected officials, community at large, the press, and media in general. And I have been president of the Joint Center coming up on 2 years, but as you can, tell the 55-year history, Joint Center has a long history in doing this type of analysis, and look forward to sharing more of this analysis with your audience at large.
Monica, take a second, if you would, to introduce yourself as well and your role at the center.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us on, Al. My name is Monica Mitchell. I'm Chief of Staff at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. And that means I get a chance to work across all of our programs, research, policy, operations. And being at the Joint Center, as Dedrick mentioned, it really means being a steward of 55 years of history, particularly at this moment in time where we're looking at the policies that not only advance Black communities, but also the preservation of those policies and advancement of those policies. So grateful to be a part of the legacy and this moment in time and carrying it forward.
I'm in Minneapolis, and so I feel you with the weather. We had 40 below here.
Wow.
No snow, but 40 below. And what's amazing,
I can't
however, is that a lot of Minnesotans took to the streets this past weekend, 40 below wind chill weather, protesting the atrocity of what we call the murder of 2 American citizens by federal ICE. So we'll talk about that a little later as well. But I want to acknowledge that I understand the challenges you guys are facing out on the East Coast with the weather and the outages. So thank you. Be safe, be safe, be safe. Talk about the article. What did you mean? Dr. King's warnings seem more prescient than ever. Explore that with me, if you would, Dedrick. May I call you Dedrick?
Please do. So, I start off the article, the op-ed, with a quote from Dr. King that I think, particularly with you being in Minneapolis, might connect with the feelings there. But the quote comes from a Dr. King speech beyond Vietnam. And the quote says, "When machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered." And I think that really does surmise, and this was before at least the second shooting that happened in Minneapolis, but you can, I still think there was a feeling of, with National Guard troops across the country, with our military attacking other countries, bombing other countries, with feelings of greater economic insecurity, attacks on immigrants and DEI as a guise for attacking advancements of people of color, particularly African Americans. And these most recently, or not most recently, but last year, the kind of giant tax cuts that probably will just continue to concentrate wealth. We're at a space where it really does feel like the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. But I would say what is inspiring is seeing people out in the streets in freezing weather saying that, they haven't let themselves be overcome by fear or by giving up hope, but are out there, still confronting these things, which truly is the legacy of Dr. King. I've always quibbled with the idea of King Day being a day of community service, when it should be an ongoing commitment to activism. Like Dr. King wasn't, known for community service. He was known for activism and political protest.
You write in the op-ed that this historic regression corresponds with the recessionary environment for Black America in particular. And that is the message from the State of the Dream 2026, from regression to signs of a Black recession. Unpack that for me, if you would, both of you.
Monica, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that is, most important, and I think that jumped out at me as an editor in this State of the Dream report is really how the first 100 days of the administration, we saw executive orders dismantling diversity programs across federal agencies. At the same time, the government really just stopped the ability to track and collect demographic data. And, what that has really pointed to is not only the inability to see the impact of these changes, but also the potentially disproportionate share that, that Black America has borne of those cuts.
Yeah, and Bill, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, building off of that, I do, as Monica highlighted, we saw like regression, right? We saw attacks, we saw executive orders taking away, even executive orders going back to Lyndon Johnson, the equal employment opportunity, right? We saw massive cuts. I believe there's maybe 317,000 people were pushed out of the federal government, right? Which is a very large number for 1 year, right? And so we saw this regression. And then by the end of the year, we are seeing signs of a Black recession, right? We've had record low level Black unemployment, about 6.2% at the beginning of the year. And it had gotten down to, I think, 4.8% a year or so ago. And we see the steady rise. And now we see the last numbers were 7.5% Black unemployment. In November, it was 8.3%. So we're seeing signs now that these attacks, I think the insecurity of the economy, are moving us toward a Black recession, and wanted to make sure that this is that we're highlighting this and that we're engaging this amongst the hundreds of issues that are coming up with a lot of these radical changes happening in government.
And
so
we
I
don't.
think one of the other pieces is that if that unemployment rate were the same for the entire country, we would be in an acknowledged recession. And so that's one of the important pieces that the report brings out. And when you disaggregate that data, for Black youth unemployment, the rates are even higher.
It's important to me that we look at intent. And it seems to me the strategies being deployed by the Trump regime have an intention of dismantling economic possibility for the Black community. Does that make sense? Am I far off? How do you read it? I mean, it reminds me of what's happening now. You talk about the impact on Black businesses. What's going to happen with Black businesses as regression and recession continue? And what does that mean for the depletion of wealth in the Black community?
Yeah, in the State of the Dream 2026 report, from regression to signs of Black recession, we do a breakout around entrepreneurship. And, it's a mix of things. One, there's the kind of outright attack on the Small Business Administration and kind of wiping out their staff. There's also the attack on the funds that have been used to try to help develop minority business development. And I want to note, I was critical of a lot of those programs for not doing enough. So I don't want just things to come back. I want things to come back stronger, right? Because it wasn't doing enough, and there wasn't strong enough Black representation in the investments that these programs were putting forward. But the answer was not to completely pull them away, and as well as you're cutting massive government agencies, it also limits the ability for small businesses to have contracts. And I guess too, to note, the small business work the government's doing, most of that wasn't even going to Black businesses. So it's not just that Black businesses are being hurt. Small businesses across the country are being hurt. And I think there'll be a greater and greater pushback as we feel what is occurring. And that was one other thing I'll say about entrepreneurship. The kind of radical tariff policy, on again, off again, is just creating a economically unknowable, insecure environment, which is making businesses big and small much more conservative, much more cautious in their hiring, in their building out. And that is all slowing down the economy. And I think the Black labor market's one of the first to feel that with this steady increase in Black unemployment.
And Al, just to piggyback off of what Dedrick just mentioned, I think, just the word, the unknowable, is, I think is appearing to be part of the strategy, right? Like, not only do you cut the protection, but you eliminate the ability to measure. And so when you eliminate the ability to measure, it's much easier to claim there's no problem because there's no data showing a problem. And, and so that unknowable, across many of these policy areas that were, dissected in State of the Dream, means that it's much more difficult to demonstrate disparate impact if there's no measurement.
One of the things you say in the op-ed, Dedrick, is the current leadership is implementing policies that destroy government jobs. You just mentioned that, and dismantle agencies. You just mentioned that, responsible for preventing predatory economic practices. So the consequence of that is what?
Well, and we're maybe just we're barely touching the consequences of these actions. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges of the 2026 report is that so the implementation of things in 2025 oftentimes much more strongly felt in 2027. And we have much more, I'm sure, changes that will occur. But the dismantling of the CFPB, the attempted dismantling of the Department of Education, all of these things, the tearing apart of treasuries, racial equity kind of division that did that analysis, we'll just start feeling these things over the next year, 2 years. And, and that's kind of the greatest concern, is that if we have an ongoing insecure economy, we've all been feeling the ongoing rise of prices in our day-to-day goods for the last 5 or 6 years, with a slowing down of hiring and for African Americans, an increase in the unemployment rate. This all feeds a predatory economic situation where also all of the guardrails and those supposed to implement and watch over the guardrails, and also are supposed to make sure that Americans are being treated fairly, justly, and are having economic opportunity. We're totally dismantling all of these things as we're getting into a more economically precarious situation. So I think this all, are negative signs for the future. The challenge is we won't have hard data in it till probably 2027, 2028. And it's, no one wants to wait until your ship has sunk to then declare that the ship has sunk. We wanted to highlight that, hey, I think we're sinking. We better do something now.
And so this is back to the point you made earlier, Monica, and that is that the data is becoming more difficult to come by. They intend to eliminate the systems and processes that gave us the ability to measure the harm. And so go back to that again. Why is it important that we find ways to document and to measure? And can we rely on the government, since it's just dismantling those systems in this arena, or do we have to do something different? I mean, how does the Joint Center, for example, step up and become a place that provides as a repository for data analysis and information that guides our community? What do you think?
So let me go back to your first point of your question, which is, what is the harm? If I'm a Black worker who gets denied a promotion, or I'm a Black business owner who can't get a loan, or a Black family facing housing discrimination, historically, there were federal agencies tracking those patterns, investigating those complaints, and enforcing civil rights laws. Now, those offices have been gutted or closed, the data collection is stopped, the enforcement capacity is gone. So discrimination can be happening, and we have decades of evidence to show that it does happen, but there's no system to catch it, measure it, or remedy it. And so, the argument has been made that we're eliminating these systems because we're creating a level playing field. Well, we know that's not the case. What removing those systems does, it removes the referees who can call out when the game is rigged.
Mhm.
And that's the issue that we're, that we're beginning to face now. In the absence of, I mean, the ultimate remedy is that, we create stronger systems again at the federal government level. And, to Dedrick's point earlier, those systems didn't work perfectly to begin with. So there were certainly opportunities to improve them. And that, I think is one of the opportunities that exists in this moment in time, is to figure out what wasn't working with those previous systems. And as we work and advocate to rebuild them, close those critical gaps and build them back in a better way.
Oh, wow.
We're going to stop right there and continue this conversation tomorrow. James, what do you think? Interesting conversation. Any feedback or thoughts? Are you hearing me, James? Yeah, I'm not sure you're able to hear me, but that was a great conversation. That was Monica Mitchell and Dedrick Asante-Muhammad with the Center for Joint Policy. And we're going to continue this tomorrow, but I wanted to take a minute or two before we close at 1 o'clock to ask my colleague James Trice to weigh in on that comment, and he's going to join me again tomorrow. We'll finish this conversation tomorrow. In the meantime, a couple of important things going on today. One, at 2:30 today, the national president of the NAACP will be in a community meeting over at the NAACP office at 1104, I think, West Broadway. That might not be the exact address, but you can look up their address. And after a meeting with NAACP officials about what has happened, particularly, with ICE in Twin Cities, he's also meeting with a group organized by Representative Ilhan Omar, and that's happening at around 5 o'clock. Doors open at 5 I think the program begins at 6 o'clock, the Urban League on Plymouth Avenue. And there's another presentation that he'll be in this evening at 7, I believe, up at the Capri Theater. James, are you back? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can, yes.
So thank you for hanging with me today, talking about what you do at the Public Policy Project, and agreeing to come back tomorrow. We'll be live streaming at 1 tomorrow. We'll listen to the balance of that presentation by Monica Mitchell and Dedrick Asante-Muhammad, and just talk about public policy, but also talk about what's happening in Twin Cities. Before we leave, a couple of minutes, this conversation, as we said before, has to do with our people having a sense of ownership of public policy. What does that mean, and what do we need to do?
So the question is, what does it mean to own public policy?
Yeah. What is our role? What is our role in creating the public good, the direction? Are we simply bystanders, victims, afterthoughts? How do we put ourselves at the center of developing policy for living and for life in our community and in the world? What do you think?
I think the first step is to really educate yourself around what's going on. We need to educate ourselves about what is actually happening, and look at history. We have been the center of public policy from day one. Let's be clear about that. We have been the center of it, and our efforts and our fight, our struggle, we've always had to fight within the system to recognize us just as human beings. And then there's been many challenges to that struggle that we've had. And I think our responsibility is to educate ourselves about what is going on around us. Look at history. History doesn't repeat itself, but it echoes. And need to recognize what has happened before and that it can happen again. And we need to stand strong and realize that our voice matters. And not just going into a voting booth and speaking or casting our ballot, but understanding who represents you and challenging them, not just electing them and walk away and say they got it. No, you elect someone and you see something going on, you call them and say, hey, this is what's happening. I need you to do this. But also, I'm going to stand with you. What do you need me to do, elected official? Where do you need me to be? Where do you need me to come to make my voice heard? So we have a responsibility to be involved with every aspect of public policy, from the idea to the writing of it, right? To writing it down, to moving it, to seeing it actualized, to seeing it through, and to continue to monitor.
We got to stop it right there. We're out of time, but I'm going to invite all of our listeners to join us again tomorrow at 1 o'clock online on YouTube or on Facebook. We'll continue this conversation and continue the presentation that we were listening to from the Center for Public Policy. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. See you tomorrow.